Good evening everyone, my name's Rod Wise, I'm the current President of Stormwater Victoria, and welcome to this evening, Health and Stormwater in the Urban Environment. Now I just want to thank our sponsors for tonight. So Department of Health, thank you very much for hosting tonight and putting some nibblies on for us, very much appreciated. Melbourne Water, Clearwater for co-branding, and thank you for all the work Clearwater's done and putting on tonight, so I really appreciate that. So we have two speakers tonight, Rod Dedman. He's going to be our first, and then Dr. Andrew Keats is going to be our second, and I'll just introduce Rod now. Rod's worked in the public health in both rural and urban local government agencies, as well as the Victorian Departments of Health and Human Services. He also worked at the EPA and is currently manager of the water program at the Department of Health. He formerly trained as an environmental health officer and has gathered extensive experience in environmental health issues related to public health. Rodney has a specific interest in the role of water, in the role water has with respect to public health, and is keen to work with the water sector about improving health and well-being. So just like to invite Rodney up to the stage.
Okay, thanks for that introduction, Rod, and to the Helens for writing that nice bio. That was pretty good, appreciate that. I've had a haircut for tonight because I knew we were being videoed, so if you can sort of edit that in a way to add a bit of hair, that'd be fantastic. Okay, this is a subject that is dear to my heart, as many in the audience will know. I've probably been banging on about it for a little while now, and it's been a fun journey, and one that I have enjoyed and hopefully will enjoy for the next few years, and yeah, put some of those aspirations and visions into place. And so what I want to achieve tonight is still get the association between the importance of protecting public health and looking at how we all can work together in the future to address a new burden of disease, the lifestyle diseases. So that's basically the focus of my presentation tonight. Right. To do that, I want to go back right to the start of public health and where it all started back in the 1840s and 1850s. It's important that we do remind ourselves when we're dealing with environmental hazards that we've got in place proper controls to protect public health. From a health perspective, we are very keen to not compromise our traditional role in health protection in pursuing new directions in preventing health. So, you know, it wasn't too long ago, it was only back in the 1850s when we used to think that it was the miasma theory that made us sick. So it was some mystical thing in the air that gave us cholera and bubonic plague. And it wasn't until John Snow, one of the founding epidemiologists, who founded epidemiology, thought that, you know, that really doesn't make sense. How can you get sick from miasma when there's only certain areas in the community that are getting sick? If miasma was causing us to be ill, everyone would be getting sick because the air's everywhere. So John Snow, back in Soho, when there was the Soho cholera outbreak, observed the people that got sick and undertook an investigation by interviewing families of members who got sick. And he worked out there was an association between a particular water pump and people getting cholera. And when he convinced the council that the water pump may be the source of the cholera, and the council turned the pump off, disconnected the pump, the cholera outbreak soon dissipated. So that was the first association between hazards, germs and illness, and that was the foundation of modern day health protection. And it's still the case today, where epidemiologists still spend a lot of their time doing very similar work to John Snow back in the 1850s. John Snow, as a result of that, went on to investigate the actual causal pathway, and they worked out that there was a cesspit that had a leak in it right very close to the water pump that was contaminating the water. And obviously someone who had discharged their waste into that cesspit was a carrier of cholera and transferred to everyone who used that water pump. So I encourage you all to keep in mind the importance of health protection and all of our responsibilities to protect people from hazards in the environment, particularly in water. That's why my team's here today. Okay, so basically, as a result of those foundation work undertaken by John Snow and epidemiologists that preceded him up until today, that work informs current regulatory frameworks. And my team currently manage two regulatory frameworks, the Safe Drinking Water Act, which is well established. It's there to protect people from hazards in water, from germs in water, and there's quite strict controls that we actually regulate the water industry to comply with, and about meeting fairly stringent water quality standards to protect your health and water industry's customers' health. The other framework that's probably come along a little bit later is when it was recognised during the Millennium Drought that there was a need to look at alternative water supplies to drinking water, and there was a pretty strong uptake of recycled water for irrigation and for dual pipe schemes to flush toilets and to use it for industrial purposes. It was when recycled water started to be used for those purposes that the government wanted to put in place another regulatory framework to protect public health, because there was a greater risk of exposure to the germs in recycled water and the need to protect public health. So at the moment we've got two health protection frameworks to protect people from that traditional hazards in water, traditional germs in water that we've used for a while. Okay, with both of those frameworks, what we endeavour to do is take a risk management approach to protect public health. Those risk management approaches are based on 12 risk management steps. Simply, what we expect people to do is to understand the hazards that are in the source water, whether it's recycled water or drinking water, and to put in place controls to reduce those hazards to an acceptable level to minimise risk to public health. Typically that's through water treatment technology in the drinking water industry. They have clarifiers, DAF plants, media filtration and disinfection steps in the treatment of water. Similarly with Class A water recycling plants, a similar approach is put in place there to protect public health. But it doesn't necessarily mean going to that extent. It can mean other steps to exclude exposure of the water to people, and that's what I'm more interested in talking about today with things like stormwater. There's other ways to use stormwater to protect public health than going to expensive water treatment technologies to do it. Okay, the next thing I wanted to speak about was, so that's just setting the scene for our traditional work, health protection. The theme of tonight is health protection to health prevention. So what's that mean? Well, you'd all be familiar with the new lifestyle diseases. As with John Snow, epidemiologists are still around, and epidemiologists are still plotting where disease happens. At the moment, they still spend a lot of time on plotting chronic diseases and acute diseases. And at the moment there's quite a significant approach on looking at where lifestyle diseases occur. The Department of Health invests a lot of time in undertaking epidemiological studies in relation to lifestyle diseases, and two interesting publications they've got are the Victorian Health Monitor and the Victorian Population Health Survey, which I'd encourage you all to look at. They're available on our website at www.health.vic.health, and it gives a lot of background about where modern diseases are, lifestyle diseases occur. And as with John Snow, they don't do things a lot differently. and they try and identify where the greatest burden of disease is. We spend a lot of time identifying where the greatest burden of disease. We are charged with reducing the equity gap so that there's no one population suffer greater burden of disease than others. Unfortunately, when we look at disease rates, there are certain populations that do suffer quite significantly larger burden of disease than others. One population that we're particularly interested in the health department are the western suburbs of Melbourne. And you can see here, when we look at the burden of disease, there's some populations out around Sunshine, Brimbank, Ardea, etc., where their rate of disease is much greater than the average population. So we need to do something with those populations to address that. Not quite sure what it is, but we need to do something. And I'm keen to look at our role here as a water industry and as a local government industry to address that inequity. As with acute disease, the traditional health protection, we put in place frameworks in government that try and help us achieve behaviour change and improve health status. Many of you would be familiar with the Victorian Public Health and Wellbeing Plan. That sets the framework for addressing lifestyle diseases. Okay, and a quote out of the Health and Wellbeing Plan, which I'd like you to all be familiar with, is that the plan has a goal to improve the health and wellbeing of all Victorians by engaging communities in prevention and by strengthening systems of health protection, health promotion and preventing health care across all sectors and levels of government. So one of the main outcomes the Victorian Health and Wellbeing Plan wants is for us to collaborate in health prevention activities, and that's what I want to encourage tonight and in the future. Okay, I thought there was another slide there. Okay, the Health and Wellbeing Plan sets out 9 priority steps, which I think we need to think about tonight and in the future when we intervene and with the use of stormwater and integrated water management. We need to build prevention infrastructure, so we need to invest in infrastructure that encourages good health behaviour. We need to develop leadership and we need to strengthen partnerships to maximise prevention effort. And that's the main thing that I want to encourage, is we'll only get success if we work together. And we've already started a lot of that with Greening the West sort of initiatives and other initiatives in local government. OLV is an example of the government recognising the need to collaborate and do things in partnership, work in partnership. We need to renew financing to ensure that available resources are based on population needs. So we focus our efforts, we focus our resources where it's needed most. The western suburbs of Melbourne is an example of where the population needs more help than others. We need to develop effective modes of engagement. We need to understand what populations need to get behaviour change. We need to strengthen local capacity. We need to improve health service capacity, health care capacity. We need to integrate policy and planning to achieve better public health and wellbeing. Once again, OLB is an example of the government's priority in that area. We need to increase health literature. We need to increase health literature to help Victorians manage their own health needs, so they can be informed in their decision making to look after themselves. And we need to tailor interventions for priority populations to reduce disparity. Okay, moving on from that, background on protecting health and preventing health. Our job is, what does livability mean? What does integrated water cycle management mean? How can we use those 2 themes to get the prevention health outcomes that we desire in the health department? At the moment, there's been a lot of talking about it. I think there's still not an agreed definition of livability or integrated water cycle management, but it's probably time to move on and actually settle on that and actually get some runs on the board. I looked at sort of livable cities. What does livable cities mean? You know, my thoughts, I've always thought that integrated water cycle management and livable cities is about matching all your water sources with all different water uses. So I still think it's something like that, but it's confusing and it can become emotionally charged when we have these conversations. Okay, but there's no doubt that the livable cities term is well established. There's a number of organisations that rank cities according to their livability. Melbourne often comes up in the top 10 cities in the world as being one of the most livable cities. When you look at those 6 or so different methodologies for ranking livability, there's some of the common points that among all those schemes, all those rankings. You know, the determinants of health are about employment, having full employment. It's about everyone having access to education. It's about low rates of illness. It's about being physically healthy and mentally healthy. It's about low crime rates, political stability, cost of living, etc., etc. But there's some really important things that I think interests us in the water industry, in the local government industry, and how we integrate water into our cities. You know, the built environment for good health, access to quality sport and recreation facilities, artistic and cultural opportunities, social connection, I think are all common aspects of livability that we need to engage with and build into our strategies when we're looking at integrated water and the way we design our communities. Okay, integrated water cycle management. A lot of definitions around there, but getting back to my understanding of integrated water management, it's really about how do we use fresh water, wastewater, rainwater and stormwater in a way that improves livability, improves the places we live, improves health, protects health. How do we manage those waters in our cities in a way that achieves that? In the context of a water-sensitive city, this means managing urban development, urban activities and urban environments as part of the urban water cycle to achieve social, environmental and economic benefit. It's important that I think the reality, when we face the reality test, we do need to prove that there is benefit here, both economic and social and environmental benefit. In the context of health protection and health prevention, the following slides are some of the activities I think that we can model our efforts on. And we don't need to go too far from home to see some really good examples of how we can integrate all different types of water into our neighbourhoods and cities to achieve the desired outcomes. Just sticking to the theme of health protection, we do encourage that we take a risk hierarchy approach. So where there's a greater risk to public health, we do encourage you to use low risk water, for example, rainwater and drinking water. Where water is not likely to expose people to a health risk, that's where we should be looking at higher risk water sources like recycled water and some stormwater and grey water. It's still a theme we want to pursue. And now I'll go through some examples that I see that we can learn from and build into future strategies, into future infrastructure in our local neighbourhoods. You know, urban wetlands are obviously something that City of Melbourne's pursued, other councils and water authorities have pursued. You know, we think that the wetlands provide a great opportunity to collect, treat water and use to improve the quality of our open spaces for many uses. Not only for irrigating the open space so it's green, but to irrigate spaces to improve the coverage, tree coverage to address urban heat island effect and provide quality spaces for recreation and sporting activities. We think we really do need to look at every opportunity to co-locate water sources with compatible activities. So we need to look at where there are industries that need water and look at where those industries can be located with recycled water opportunities, stormwater opportunities to save our drinking water for high-end uses for drinking. That's an example there. Okay, urban revegetation. The Health Department, as many of you would know, is really keen on increasing the rate of vegetation in our urban environments. You're all familiar with the result of the extreme heat we had back in 2009, where the rate of mortality and morbidity increased dramatically during that period. When the Chief Health Officer investigated those increased rates, it was quite clear that the increased heat in the urban environments was a significant factor, and that we needed to do something about increasing vegetation in our urban environments to cool down those areas. So we do need to look at strategies of how we can increase vegetation to achieve that outcome. Okay, some examples in Melbourne in relation to sort of recreation, passive recreation opportunities. Heidi, out to the east of Melbourne along the Yarra River there, is a 5 or 6 hectare public space that is used as a place where people can go and have picnics, learn about gardening, etc. Learn about how you use different water supplies to sustain green open spaces. We would like to see more of that across the whole of Melbourne, those sort of opportunities. Okay, we would like to see open spaces designed in a way for multiple uses, for passive recreation, for organised sports, for urban forests, for urban food production. So we need to look at the way we do master plans for open spaces to achieve this in a way that they're sustainable and affordable to maintain, for 50 years. And there's many examples of that at the moment. Yep, just about there. Stormwater Forest up in Canberra is right 15 minutes from the centre of Canberra. It's a site that's used for multiple purposes. More active recreation, competitive cycling, competitive cross-country running, mountain biking, bushwalking, and I think that's a great example of some of our large open spaces that we should be looking at looking how we can develop some of our large open spaces to achieve those sort of things. I think Stromlo Urban Forest is a good example of something that we should be looking at in Melbourne, and there's some great opportunities in Melbourne and in the west of Melbourne to do this sort of thing. Okay, urban food production. I think looking at some of these photos, urban food production's been something that's been of interest to urban communities for a long time. But I think that's something that is worth pursuing. There is a great connection between producing your own food for good mental health. Urban food production's been shown to be a great focal point for building social connection and building strong communities. There's a lot of community gardens, I think we should be looking at larger scale urban farming to build communities in some of those open spaces. And an example of that is Ceres Environmental Park in Brunswick, which provides a great educational centre, provides a great community food production centre, provides a great learning space, and is a good use of open space to do a whole range that achieves a whole lot of health benefits, and runs a successful food production business there. That could easily be sustained with alternative water supplies rather than, co-locating Ceres models across different regions in Melbourne and Victoria could easily be sustained through alternative water, integrated water use. Diggers Club's another example down Mornington Peninsula, similar to Ceres, where it's a community non-profit, 5 acres of food production where people can go and have picnics, eat food, grow food. So they're the sort of things for mental health and well-being, and to address diabetes, heart disease, we think are good things that are worth pursuing. One that's interest, connectivity. We often talk about integrated water cycle management. Livable cities is all about connectivity. Using our creeks, our rivers as active pathways, active transport routes to get people physically active. It's certainly something that is an important part of Greening the West's goal, is to use every creek, every river as a connection route where people can walk and cycle to connect to schools, shopping centre and other key destination points. In the UK, there's a great example where they've taken that another step forward, and they use those routes as incredible edible pathways, edible connection routes, where there's orchards, fruit trees and other food production along all of those pathways. Once again, using water to do that. So in conclusion, the last slide is water-sensitive urban design and mitigate urban heat island is a priority of the Health Department. Quality open space for all populations is a high priority for us in the Health Department. Green corridors for active transport, for cycling, walking and even food production is something that could be aspired to. Functional spaces to encourage physical activity at all levels, from the Stromlo full-on physical activity down to more passive recreation. We should be looking at catering for all needs and using every open space functionally and sustaining those spaces with integrated water strategies. Okay, using all water, co-locating fit-for-purpose uses with fit-for-purpose water supplies. And most importantly, it's not going to happen unless we collaborate and leverage each other's efforts to do this. So there's no doubt in my mind that we can achieve all our goals if we work together productively. And finally, from a Health Department's point of view, we'd encourage effort where it's most needed, in the populations that are most vulnerable, in the populations where we need the greatest behaviour change to get more physical activity, more mental health interventions. So that's it.
Can everyone please help me thank Rodney Dedman. I'll just ask you to hang around, Rod, for a few questions. So as people think of their questions, I'll probably start it off with firstly a comment and then a question. My comment is I've actually got a chance to read some of the Sun Herald today, and they supported this notion of the West needing some attention with their health aspect, and suggesting that most of the healthy people or that lived a healthy lifestyle are actually in the inner city. And they went one step further and they said, if you support a football team, particularly Hawthorn, well, you were the healthiest, so maybe we should all support Hawthorn. I don't know. But my question to you is, has there been any reports of people getting ill from integrated water cycle management schemes or stormwater harvesting schemes that you're aware of?
It's a difficult question. We have quite sophisticated monitoring and reporting of disease to the Health Department. There are many gastro-like illnesses that must by law be reported to us for our surveillance teams to follow up and investigate the sources. There is an underlying rate of gastro-like diseases that we're not sure of the source of. I heard one of our medical officers the other day in a public presentation say that it's not until we get probably 20,000 people sick that we can actually identify that there is an outbreak. And that was used in the case of the cryptosporidium outbreak in public pools or in swimming pools recently. While we had tens of people notified to us about being crypto, we suspected that there were tens of thousands of people sick with it, and we think he thought that we only started to get notified of the illness when we reached the 20,000 illness mark in the population. So there's rates of disease in the community that are always there. It's only when we get significant point source increases in a particular disease that we can pick up sources typically for common diseases. We have had irregular outbreaks associated with private water supplies, rainwater tank systems at school camps and that. But specifically related to stormwater harvesting schemes, I'm personally not aware of it, but we suspect there would be underlying cases resulting from it.
Thanks, Rod, for your presentation. Lee Holmes from Spire. Just with integrated water management, I suppose we were looking at a whole range of different spatial scale treatments and things like that. It's always been a little bit grey in terms of allotment level treatments and what we can do at the allotments, that spatial scale. Rainwater tanks, hot water, and general uses around the allotment. What's your position on that?
That's another loaded question, Rod. Look, we know there has been a number of studies that have shown an association between drinking rainwater and ill health. When you look at the number of rainwater tanks used in Victoria and Australia, the rate of illness is very low, to be fair, but we know that both from a theoretical perspective, there's a causal pathway. If your roof catchment and your gutters become contaminated with germs, and they do, with birds and animals, those germs are going to get into your rainwater tank. You are going to be exposed to those germs. So there's a theoretical causal pathway, and there is epidemiological evidence that backs that up, that they do cause disease. It's very, very low, and it's something that some people in this room know that's been challenging us for a number of years. We understand that rainwater tanks have a role in our society, both from an environmental and a health perspective. So look, our position is that we would prefer people to drink water supplied by the water authorities for drinking purposes and ablution, washing purposes. But we're quite happy for people to use rainwater for flushing toilets, washing clothes, and even putting it through your hot water tank, because we believe the nature of the pathogens that are likely to be in rainwater are treated through good hot water systems. What we encourage people to do though is be informed about the risks and make sure they make the right decisions, getting back to those principles in the health and wellbeing plan, make sure they make the right decisions to look after their own health. So, we would be keen on undertaking a public awareness program for people that choose to use rainwater and put it through their hot water system, to do it in a way that protects their health and their family's health. And that's really about choosing the right hot water system that's most likely to do the controls that are necessary, perform the controls that are necessary.
G'day, Rod. Alex Fazis from City West Water. Rod, on the areas you showed on the slide, sort of Deer Park, St Albans, Sunshine area, what do you see as the biggest challenges to I suppose, change that from a red colour down to your blue or white? And what are some other challenges you see retrofitting already urbanised, like in inner city areas?
The greatest challenge is probably giving everyone in those areas a job. Honestly, you know, the fundamental determinants of health is employment. But that's not everything. We can help by providing proper amenities for all Victorians to give them the best chance to be healthy. So on top of having a job, it's about providing assets to encourage people to get outside, be physically active, being connected to their community, feeling valued, feeling part of their community. You need those on top of having a job. On top of that, we know that the West is hotter than every other part of Melbourne because of the poor rate of vegetation in the West. There's no doubt if any of us went out to Sunshine, Adir, Brimbank tonight, tomorrow, there's very little vegetation in the streets where people live. You go out to the east of Melbourne, every street, every house has got a tree in front of it that provides good canopy cover. That results in the east of Melbourne being 2, 3, 4 degrees cooler on a day above 30 than in the west of Melbourne. So we should be looking at how we re-vegetate the west of Melbourne to provide the people that live there with the same opportunities as people in the east of Melbourne. So it's a very complex and very difficult problem, but we're charged, all of us are charged with finding a solution to that, to give them the same opportunities as the rest of us.
Now, Rod, this is probably going to be
another
question.
Dorothy Dixer, Andrew.
Well, no, it probably won't be. And it probably goes to the heart of sort of, I suppose, the understanding outside of the health area about sort of risks and sort of perception and everything like that. And probably more fundamentally goes to, as you know, sort of as we manage sort of spending government money and everything across a whole range of portfolios. What's a sensible conversation about what sort of level of risk we can take on and what we can't? And I suppose the question is that I know that from some of the work done in terms of looking at stormwater harvesting guidelines and all that sort of stuff, and then comparing that with recycled water, there are different contaminants of concern and that sort of stuff. There's different issues with associated with the source water, and then the notion of what comes in terms of what might make people sick and that sort of stuff. And the question is, and this probably also with allergies and all that sort of stuff, we know that things make you sick, but in a healthy population, is there an ability to have some level of exposure and not get sick? So probably more fundamentally to how the sort of the health science works behind it. So, is there a level of contaminated water that we could reasonably expect to in a healthy population? Yep.
Yeah, good question. There's no such thing as zero risk. We accept that in public health. There is no such thing as zero risk. The water that the water businesses supply to you in your tap at home has a level of contamination in it that we accept. That's the way we work in public health, and that's the way the 12 elements of a good risk management framework works. It's about working out the level of contamination that you start with, knowing what level is acceptable, and putting something in between that protects people from to protect their health. Now, look, it's quite a complicated science that sits behind determining an acceptable level of risk that I'm not capable of going into tonight. But it's based on that there's no such thing as a zero level of risk. It's based on that we do accept a level. It goes into quite complicated statistical analysis, and it goes through the bell curve that, there's something like a 5% on the tail of the bell curve. That is where we need to get to, that we will accept. But putting that aside, a lot of the work that we're involved in here is about affordability. We don't encourage people to go and spend millions and millions of dollars treating water to improve health. Okay, so there's other ways to use water in a way where you're not exposing people to health. It's about the time, it's about how you use the water. It's about the times you use the water. It's about integrated, and we were talking before about the Botanic Gardens. It's got a very sophisticated integration system there, where they irrigate mostly when the when the Botanic Gardens are closed, where they use stormwater, where they use urban water that has got a degree of hazards in it that might place people at risk if they're exposed to that water when it's been irrigated. So they irrigate through drip irrigation. They do their spray irrigation at times when the gardens are closed, and when they have to irrigate with spray irrigation when the park's open, they convert to potable water. So so they've got 95% savings for when they do the majority of the irrigation, but the 5% of time that they have to irrigate when there's public exposed, they use safe water. So this is where we need to get smarter. Rather than go and spend $20 billion building a sophisticated Class A water recycling plant, let's think about how we can do it in an affordable way and end up with water that's too expensive to use anyway. Let's save our money to do better things and make sure that the water that is available to us is affordable.
Okay, please help me thank Rod Dedman for his fantastic presentation.